Okay, here we go. Stand by. 3, 2, 1, action.
Assume nothing.
Brash, bald-faced blasphemy.
Question everything.
I find it extremely hard to imagine.
Open your eyes.
It is quite all right to be an atheist.
The fastest growing group of people in the country has been measured as being those who have no belief or who are atheists.
You don't have to be apologetic or quiet about it.
Challenge the opposition.
You see religion on 100 fronts losing the argument.
And start thinking. This is the Thinking Atheist worldwide.
As we get into the summer months, we're getting ready for a lot of activities on the calendar, and I'm having a hard time keeping them all straight. I'm one of those people that if it's not written down somewhere, then it's just gone. So, fortunately, we've got lists on the website, on the Facebook page of many of these major events that are coming up. This coming weekend is a pretty big one. The Secular Student Alliance, they're actually doing two, but the Vegas conference is happening this weekend, and it's going to be freaking amazing. If you're closer to Oklahoma, in Oklahoma City on Saturday, the Oklahoma Free Thought Convention 2013 is going to be happening. I'll be out there. Lawrence Krauss is the keynote speaker. It's going to be awesome, and I'm so looking forward to it. I'm going to attempt to videotape the event for everybody. I think they're going to try to have a videographer or two. I hired it out last year, and it wasn't a success. We got video, but it wasn't great. This year, I'm trying to figure out. I have a problem that it's not that I'm a control freak, but damn it, I know how I want it shot. I know what I'm looking for, so I'm going to try to prepare and do the speech, work the table, and I'm going to try to bring a camera and document the event and then be able to maybe bring it back and put it on the YouTube page. That is my hope. There was something else on my mind. What was it before we started? On the agenda for the podcast in the coming weeks, I wanted to just give everybody a heads up. On Tuesday of next week, we've got JT Eberhard going to join us on the show to talk about the arguments from theists or religious people that drive him the most crazy. And the show is called Your Argument is Invalid with JT Eberhard. You know that's going to be a fun show. After that, on the 2nd of July, How Atheism Changed Me, where we talk about the move from belief to non-belief. How did that affect all of your other worldviews? And you're not going to believe this, but, and again, this is tentative, but it's on the calendar. On the 16th of July, let me back up. I got a Facebook message, from my KXOJ radio boss, my old Christian radio boss back in the 90s. Now, I talk a lot about KXOJ as part of my own story. I spent a decade there as a Christian broadcaster, and I refer to those days and years often because they are really a pretty big piece of the puzzle. And especially in the later years of that decade, I began to start to really feel those seeds of doubt growing within me. And he apparently became aware that I was an atheist activist and took a look at the website and sent me a message, and he said, "Hey, I want to do a podcast with you." Now, of course, my first thought is, yeah, sure you do. And I was a little suspicious. I mean, wouldn't you be? Yeah, really? You want to do a podcast? So I ended up getting him on the phone. We had a conversation. When I left KXOJ back in 1999, we did not leave on good terms at all. And honestly, it was really nice. We had a chance to sort of get some of that water under the bridge to talk about. I mean, we both moved on and see all of that for what it is, but it was nice on the phone just to be able to just laugh about it and say, hey, I wasn't at my best back then. And for both of us to sort of extend the olive branch to each other. And we had a positive, really nice conversation. Well, he is the head of a website. I'm not going to tell you what it is yet. I'm going to wait till we get to the show itself, and I'll let him introduce it the way that he wishes. But he has like a ministry website. He's a true believer, an absolute Christian, Southern Baptist, I believe. And he is interested in coming and speaking with me and to the Thinking Atheist audience about his perspectives on God. I think his deal is that he said He got fed up with religion too, that he and I are pretty similar. We both kind of came to a point of critical mass, but I made one turn into atheism and he made a different turn. And he tells me that this turn is going to be a revelation to our listeners, or at least he hopes he will. Now, those of us who've done much debating in the arena, you know what I'm thinking. There is nothing new under the sun. And I expressed this concern to him. I'm like, look, if this is just another, it's not a religion, it's a relationship thing, then you're wasting your time. These people are so well versed in counter-apologetics. If you come to them with something like that, they're just going to eat you alive. And he's like, no, I think this is a lot deeper than that. I don't know, but he's going to do the show. So the guy who was my radio boss in Christian radio for 10 freaking years now is going to appear as a guest on my podcast, and we're going to talk about God. Isn't it a small world? That's the 16th of June. I don't even know what I'm going to call the show. I'm trying to decide what a good title would be. But as soon as I can get it titled, I will put it officially on the Blog Talk Radio page. And you'll probably want to be here for that one, or at least make sure you catch it in archive. I have a feeling it's going to be an interesting show. In fact, I'm kind of curious as to how it's going to come out myself. Final thing before we get into our topic, and I hesitate to bring this up, but it's been on my mind. It's been something I've been thinking about doing, and I'll just tell you about it. You know, the Thinking Atheist radio podcast is just about 3 years old. Next month, 3 years, and I love it. I hope I'm doing this show when I'm 60. I mean, I have no idea what the future holds, but I love this show. I love the audience. I love tackling the dogma, the destructive, superstitious beliefs, to educate people, including myself, about so much. I mean, think about all we've accomplished over the years. We've done everything from talk about Mormonism recently and talking about Joseph Smith and the Church of Latter-day Saints. We've learned about the Church of Satan. We've talked to people about their apostasy stories. We've talked about grief counseling and overcoming addiction and other issues without the crutch of religion. And, we've had people, everyone from David Silverman of the American Atheist to Michael Shermer to Dan Barker to my YouTube favorites, Matt Dillahunty, Aaron Ra. I mean, it's been a great run, and I hope this is just the beginning. But there are two reasons I'm considering launching a second show, and I don't have any specifics on it yet. One is that from time to time, I don't know about you, but I'm interested in talking to people or just communicating or storytelling about something other than atheism. This is really my passion. I'm going to be fighting this fight till I breathe my last breath, especially after this week. And I won't go into the details, but a very, very sharp encounter with family has galvanized my own desire to go and fight what I believe is destroying families from within. And I'm not going anywhere. But part of me thought, wouldn't it be fun to do something else? Mix it up. And the second thing that another podcast might accomplish is that as the Thinking Atheist becomes more and more a full-time endeavor for me and it's really more of a job. I mean, it's something that I'm using to sustain myself as my endeavors as a dayside producer are sort of falling away a little bit. I would make it a subscription-based show, which I'll never do with TTA. And the only way you'll ever pay for the Thinking Atheist is if, like, Sirius XM calls tomorrow and they offer a chance to have exposure that we would never have before and take the argument to a level we've never seen before. And someone had to subscribe to Sirius, which means they got 150 channels, something like that. I might go for. But otherwise, I really feel like that this conversation should not be locked up behind a subscription. I want everybody anywhere at any time to be able to log in and just be a part of the conversation, because we have more than atheists listening. We have agnostics, we have deists and theists, and we have people of all shapes and colors and stripes and backgrounds and cultures and belief systems and whatever. They're all listening in. And I just want to make it available to everybody. If we did a second show that might be a little more entertainment-based or more storytelling-based, maybe 99 cents a month or something like that would allow me to support as a radio host what I do, and everybody else could just voluntarily subscribe if they gave a shit. Like if they thought, wow, I'd like to listen to that. And the people that didn't want to listen to it, well, they wouldn't really miss anything, right? They'd still have the Thinking Atheist. It seems like kind of a win-win. The problem is the infrastructure for podcasting sucks. God, it's the year 2013, and still the infrastructure for subscription-based, especially subscription-based podcast, is killing me. I mean, on this side, I got Blog Talk Radio, whose standard indigenous audio is 8-bit 16K mono. In the year 2013, I'm sorry, this is the best fidelity you can give our listeners. That's why I'm hand mixing my own vocal mix and the call mix in post after the fact and putting a YouTube version out there. So there's at least one version of the show that doesn't sound like crap. The second thing is that when are these people going to get to the party and set up an infrastructure that allows podcasters on a larger scale to be effective? Makes me crazy. So I've been dipping my toe into those waters. If you have an opinion on it, I mean, I sort of floated a trial balloon on Facebook, and overwhelmingly people said, oh, that sounds like great fun. We'd love to do it. We'd love to support you. I mean, you can donate at the thinkingatheist.com if that's the way you want to support, and that's fine. That's totally up to you. But some people said, hey, yeah, we think another show would be great. Can I keep up with another show? Can I prep another show? What's it going to involve? I don't know. And you know what? You may be listening to this show in archive at the end of the year, and this idea just went down in flames like the Hindenburg. And so if it exists, you'll find it. If it doesn't exist, just know that, sometimes you got to throw something on the wall to see what sticks. And we may do that in the month of July. We may launch this second thing and just try a different kind of conversation to keep things fresh. And maybe I can juggle the A and B podcast together. And maybe not. Maybe I'm totally kidding myself. Tonight we're talking about people who coexist, who cohabitate with a believer. Or maybe they're a believer who cohabitates with an atheist or skeptic or agnostic people. And that's not necessarily a romantic relationship. It might be a parent and child. It might be brother, sister. It might be college roommates. Might be anybody. And I was asking our listeners about, talk to me about this situation. The show is called I Live with a Believer. What I almost called it was help. I live with a believer. And that's not because you are diminishing the worth of the other person, but because of the frustrations that often come when you are in such close proximity to someone who may hold a worldview that you consider to be ridiculous, or at least false. Demonstrably false. And the religious person looks at you and they see someone who is, look, I could never live my life without God. I don't know how this person does it, and I, whatever, but I look at them and I just shake my head and I think, wow, think of all the stuff they're missing out on. The love of God is something that would make them so much happier. I don't get it. So you've got these two parties, they're looking at each other, shaking their head, scratching their head, rubbing their temples, going, God. We covered the theist-non-theist relationship in a previous podcast, but I felt like that this angle would be a positive thing and a good way for us to sort of tackle it because it goes far beyond the husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, or romantic relationship of any kind. Had an email from Dax. Dax said, my wife and I were married 7 years ago, both very strong believers. We were both Southern Baptist in one of the largest churches in Georgia. Our pastor was president of the Southern Baptist Convention a few years back, to give you a better idea of how devout our church is. Anyway, roughly 6 months ago, I came out to my wife as a non-believer. My story is like most everyone else's I've heard, including yours. I discovered that facts, reason, and truth are so far from religion that it shocked me into reality. I serve at our church, so I've still been helping. But I stopped attending service and Sunday school about a month ago. Next Sunday is my last week before I'm gone for good. Some of my friends know, but most do not. My parents have no idea. So I still must have that massive hurdle to overcome. My folks are much like yours, very devout, so it will not be an easy adjustment for them. Anyway, my wife is still a strong believer. And of course, we still live together. She's been pretty amazing. But it's a very difficult process for her. I told her the other day how tough it must be on her, thinking I'm actually going to hell. Crazy. I used to pray before every meal, but she does that now. I appease her desire to still pray and thank God for our meal. Kind of a silly thing to battle over, in my opinion. She still tells me all the interesting things she heard in church, and I just stay quiet most of the time because I know she just needs to share her mind. I'm sure things will change a little more when I stop going to church altogether. I've read several apostate stories, and it seems one common theme is a marriage founded in the faith after one partner loses it, tend not to last. My wife and I have so many other things in common. I'm hoping we are the exception to the rule. I guess time will tell. Dax, thank you so much for the email and calling the show. I wanted to speak to a couple, Bill and Suzy, who sent me an email, I believe today, and they were going to try to call into the show on Skype because I was really anxious to hear their story. I believe I have them on the switchboard now. Bill, Suzy, are you there?
We're here, Seth.
Yep, we're here.
Thank you so much for calling the show tonight. I sort of ambushed you with this request at the last possible moment, but your story was intriguing. So I don't care who tells it or if you guys want to play off each other, and I might interrupt with some questions, but start me at the beginning. You both were believers or no?
Well, I was raised Catholic, but by the time we got married 13 years ago, and by the time we got married, I didn't have a lot of faith, and church was not something that I regularly did. And Suzy was a believer. She was a Protestant, but church wasn't a big factor in her life, but she had a lot of faith.
Hey, Suzy, did your family give you a bunch of crap for marrying a Catholic or what?
No, actually, see, by the time Bill and I were married, I had kind of moved away and kind of lost touch with most of my family except my mother, who was just totally thrilled that I was with someone who believed in God.
So they weren't weird about denominations. They were more about the general God question.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry to interrupt, Bill. So you're kind of checking out a little bit. You probably are a little cynical. I mean, what set you off?
Well, unlike a lot of people, and Suzy can tell you that she can name a date. I can't name a date. It was a gradual process for me. I was in the military, and just over the years, it became less and less important to me. And I think that's kind of how we kept the peace for a decade. It wasn't really a factor. I didn't talk about it. She did her thing, and I did mine, but I didn't even use the word atheist until I retired. And then I started looking at the internet. I started listening to podcasts, yours among others, and I was following Jessica Alquist's story in the news, and here was a young lady who was standing up and being counted. And I thought, you know what? I agree with these people. I need to stand up and be counted. So a lot of folks, in March of last year, I went down to D.C., and that really set things on edge here.
Oh, you went down to the Reason Rally on the National Mall.
Yes.
And your wife's looking at you going, oh, great. Now he's totally lost his mind. Now he's going to freaking atheist Woodstock in Washington, right? Are you shaking your head at him? What's going on in your mind right now?
That's exactly what I thought. I was like, okay, you go do your little thing. Have your fun. I'll drop you off at the bus station. That's it. Have a good time.
Yeah, she was not thrilled. What happened was I came back from that, and I was a lot more vocal. I had been building up to being more vocal, and she asked me to go out to dinner. And it was a strange request. We need to talk. We're going out to dinner. And she actually said to me, I don't know what our future holds because I think you're going down a path I can't follow. So she was basically saying, this is pretty much it.
Yeah, I was. I decided that he was actively pursuing something that I didn't approve of, and I didn't want to be part of it. I felt that it would threaten my belief.
Well, what I hear a lot of times from spouses too is, hey, this isn't a deal I made. The man I married was a believer in God. You changed the rules in the middle of the game. Was some of that going on in your head?
I think they're right when they say that. To be honest with you, Seth, I owned it. That day, I said, I'm the one making a change. I realized that. You have to own it. If you're the one changing, you're right. It's not what they bought into. So you better be understanding.
And I really wasn't okay with it. I really wasn't.
And so you guys, are you mentally dividing up all your stuff? Are you starting to have that conversation or what?
I had that fear. But at that dinner, we had a long talk, and she said, look, I don't want to debate this. I don't want you to try to convince me of anything. I like what I believe, so don't kick my puppy. And that was the agreement. I call it the don't kick my puppy conversation.
That's been our theme. Don't kick my puppy. That's exactly what I
kick my puppy. Okay, there's another possible show title for me down the way. I always like to make a note when I hear a good one. So she's saying, look, this is a protected, cherished thing. It's something I have sort of hidden in my heart. Don't jack with it, and let's see what happens.
Yes. So basically, I was very careful about what I said to her from there on out. I didn't make cracks about her talking to her imaginary friend after that conversation.
Yeah, he was doing that before that conversation, though.
Yeah,
he was giving you shit about praying.
Yeah, he would say something about me talking to my imaginary friend.
That's my sense of humor.
Yeah.
Getting me in trouble.
No,
I owned it.
I think I was at a meeting with some people the other day, and they all know my story, and they overtly said, we would like to pray over this, And I could tell it was a little bit of a dig. And as a response, I said, well, hey, we're going to roll the bones and read the tea leaves and sacrifice a live goat. I mean, when is that going to happen? And you're going to cut the air in the room with a knife. But I totally understand what that's about. And so you sort of walked on eggshells. You sort of did your thing. And then what happened?
Well, I'll give you my perspective, and she can give you the background of what was happening that I didn't know about. One day in July, I'm sitting on the couch, and she's in the middle of the living room floor typing on her computer, and she just stops, and she's really weird. And I said, honey, what's wrong? And she said, I'm afraid if I hit post on this blog I just wrote, and she didn't have a blog, so that was unusual, lightning is going to strike me, and I'm going to die right here. I said, well, what does this say? And she said, it says I'm an atheist. And I almost fell off the couch because I didn't see that coming. I was floored.
Suzy, what's going on? You doing a slow burn in the background while he's doing his thing? How in the world did you get from don't kick my puppy to I'm an atheist?
Well, I think, and my oldest son used to make reference to people sticking their heads in the sand. And I think that's the best way to describe my life up until this point. I never had anyone challenging me. I never had anybody even offering any other information than what I had. It was very one-sided. Everything was God this and God that, and you believe in God, and your friends believe in God, and everybody believes in God, and God makes things better. And so as soon as Bill came out, it was like he would do things like when we got in the car, he would put a podcast on if he was driving, and I would listen to it. It just made me so irritated. I'm like, fine, whatever. I will listen to it. And I'm listening to.
And she's talking about you, by the way.
No, was it my podcast, or was it like the Atheist Experience, or all the above?
All of the above.
All right.
But I remember the first podcast I actually have in my memory was I think it was a Halloween podcast that you did.
We did the history of the haunted history of Halloween, and then we did some ghost stories as well, I think.
It was the ghost stories one. It was the ghost stories one. I remember.
Yeah, because I figured that one was neutral. I'm like, wait, this isn't religion. This is
he played the neutral ones. So I was thinking, like the whole time, that I believed in God, but then I had this it was like a little thing sitting on my shoulder going, you're smarter than this. And as soon as I decided that I was an intelligent human being, then I could make decisions for myself. And I think as soon as I decided that I was going to make decisions for myself, I had to stop trying to let God try to make my decisions for me. And I would listen to things, and I started listening to everything, and I started reading things, and I started wondering what was actually in the Bible, what the Bible actually said. And I started wanting to learn about the arguments that people make. So Bill and I would always, he'd mention it every once in a while. And then I was sitting in my living room, and Bill had pulled out the DVD, the Reason Rally DVD, and he had it playing on the TV, and I had my computer in front of me. And I was listening to that Reason rally, and I decided that it was time to get off the fence. And I decided, even though it was super, super scary that I was going to hop off the fence, I hopped off on the side of reason. And that's where I'm at.
And your husband walks out to the middle of the yard and beats his chest and screams that primal scream of ebullience and joy. I mean, come on. You had to be doing freaking somersaults when this happened, or were you just shook up?
Actually, it was just the opposite. I don't take credit for that. I purposely didn't do that.
No. I'm not talking about you high-fiving yourself, but I mean the idea that you saw somebody who'd sort of been released from the chains of dogma, someone who made the journey on their own. That has to be an amazing feeling.
That's exactly. I was glad she did it on her own. And I think you have to find that for yourself anyway. But I was happy for her, but well, you've been there, and all of us have been there. That's a really weird stage when you first say, this thing I believed in all my life, I don't think it's real. Yeah. That's really scary.
I think
so. We kind of worked through that at first. I think the
scarier part of that for me was, okay, now I don't believe. I honestly thought, because it's kind of like, what if, and I thought I was going to get struck by lightning in a sense, but more appropriately, I have family. I thought like some bad accident was going to happen to my family, and it was going to be because I didn't believe anymore. It was God punishing me for not believing in him. It really took me a long time to get past that. It's
funny how fear works, isn't it? I don't know how long it took me. Seems to take different people a different length of time to get over those. I don't know if it's necessarily just the fear of hell. It's more like the fear of getting it wrong when the stakes are so high. Does that sound like a fair way to put it?
Yeah, it does.
And over the course of time, you see lightning doesn't strike and the earth doesn't split wide open. And then you meet other people who are non-believers, who are not the monsters that everybody said they were. And
I'm a sponge now. That's what I think of myself as a sponge now, because I am what I consider a learning atheist. Oh, by the way, my date is July 13th, 2012. That was the
Well, do you get a chip or something for that? Or do you get a gold star from us for sure? That's awesome.
The only blog entry I've ever done is on that day. And I plan on, I'm hoping July 12th of 2013 to write another blog entry that's just about the way the whole year has been, because I've learned so much. And poor Bill here, he's like been my teacher. Every question I have, it goes right to him. Every argument, everything I do, I don't know anything. Oh, by the way, Bill, I've never really read the Bible. Can we do that, please? Because now that I'm an atheist, I really want to read the Bible. So
she's keeping you on your toes, Bill. I mean, you're probably thinking, hey, she's teaching me stuff while she's asking all the questions.
She has gone from, in a year, Seth, from believer who was thinking of leaving her husband because he didn't believe in God to want to deconvert the world. Attending atheist conventions, sitting in an Ask an Atheist booth last weekend, podcasting, you name it.
Yeah, we've definitely taken up the activist role, because I am really, truly affected by a couple major things about religion, like the fact that it's such a blow to your self-esteem. I mean, really, I went through basic training, and for years, I can tell you, the reason that I got through Air Force basic training was because of God. I mean, I prayed every morning and every night in basic training. Basic training was really tough for me, and it was all because of God. And now I'm looking back and I'm going, you did that. That was all you. And I totally gave credit to somebody else because, I didn't think I was good enough. So I really have a problem with religion hurting people's self-esteem. And I don't think that anybody should be harmed like that ever.
Bill, what branch of the service did you serve in?
I was Air Force.
Both of you Air Force?
Yes.
Well, we have a huge, tremendous admiration and respect for the men and women of the military. Thank you for your service. And thanks for sharing your story. I'm so glad you were able to get through on the switchboard, because You know, your voices bring the story to life. And most of the stuff we're going to talk about today is not the, hey, I changed somebody else's mind kind of a story. Mostly it's about coexisting and can you or can you not make it work without going freaking insane. But your story was just sort of this, I don't know, it just made my day. And I thought maybe it might make our listeners' day as well.
I see you can coexist, but very, very gently. That's the lesson I learned.
Don't look at him and say, you're going to talk to your invisible friend today?
The imaginary friend.
Yes, learn from my mistakes, please.
Seth, I want to say that I'm honored to be on your show. I'm a big fan, and I really learn a lot from you. I just want you to know that what you do is a great thing.
I've learned more from my listeners. The idea of being able to communicate with so many wonderful people and share their stories, they encourage me. You guys encourage me. So trust me, whatever you've gotten out of the show, I've gotten back 100 times over. And it means a lot that you were here today. And I wish you both the very best, okay?
Thanks a lot, Seth.
Thanks, Seth.
All right, take it easy. I had an email in from Erica. Erica said, my husband is a non-practicing Seventh-day Adventist. I'm atheist. We celebrated our 14th anniversary last February. I've always been skeptical, I guess you could say agnostic, since high school, but still held on to the possibility of God being real. My parents took my brother and me to a Sunday school every week as a kid. When I reached my teen years, religion was never a big part of my life. After I had our second baby in 2004, I felt like I was doing them wrong by not taking them to church, even though I didn't really believe. So I started going to Bible study, and they went to Sunday school and church service with me. My husband was deployed at the time. The more I learned in Bible study, the more I realized it's all crap. Then one Sunday, I had my 3-year-old in the church service with me, and the chaplain preached about homosexuals going to hell. And I decided that was it. My kids will not be brought up like this, and I want no part of it. I was still more agnostic than atheist until about 4 years ago. I realized it doesn't make sense, and it's ridiculous to try and convince myself it does, and that it's okay not to hide it. I started being open about being an atheist. I read Dawkins, Hitchens, Asimov, and became obsessed with Darwin and evolution, read the Bible and the Quran, and anything else I could get my hands on, even the Satanic Bible, which my husband wanted out of the house as soon as I was done with it, LOL. In the last couple years, I've been more vocal than ever. That's when my husband started to have issues with it. I didn't realize how much it bothered him until he pretty much broke down one day and said he didn't know what was going on with me. We had a long talk, and I told him why I feel the way I feel, that I don't want our kids indoctrinated into any religion. He's not entirely happy about that, but at the same time, he's okay with it. He's told me he understands not everything in the Bible makes sense. And I think a part of him knows it's not all true, but he's a believer, and that's okay. We have our disagreements and our discussions, some more heated than others, but in the end, our relationship is not and never was based on religion. There are a lot of things we don't agree on. Religion is just one of those things. And I'm happy to say my kids see the ridiculousness of the Bible and religion even at 9 and 12. My husband learned a few things too. I never realized so many people thought being an atheist meant you worshipped Satan. He was visiting family, and he went to see a good friend of his who was very religious and very conservative, and I came up. His friend didn't understand how I could not believe in God and assumed I worshipped Satan. My husband explained what being an atheist means, so he actually helped to educate someone else, so it can be a good thing, being in a relationship with a believer. Maybe more eyes will be opened to what atheism really is if believers find out that good people in their lives are atheists, that we're not the immoral, baby-eating, Satan-worshipping evildoers so many think we are. If I had to do it again, the whole coming out thing, I wouldn't be quite so in your face with my husband and family about it at first. I think that's what upset him the most. And while I do think believing in any God is ridiculous, it's not ridiculous to him. His beliefs don't have a negative effect on our kids or me, so I wouldn't have been so confrontational at first. Erica. Thank you very much for the email. I speak to a lot of people about what it's like to live with a deist. Natalie is a deist. And we've had our rows over religious issues. And those of you who've been through those types of discussions probably know what I'm talking about. It's funny, I told her what the show topic was tonight, and she just kind of smiled at me like, boy, we sure talk about that. She likes being behind the scenes. She doesn't want to really be in the spotlight at all. But I mean, I was like, I've been down that road. Sometimes I look at her and I'm like, what the hell? And then she looks at me. She's like, what's wrong with you? And it seems so obvious. The other person should see it our way. Does it frustrate her that I'm an atheist? Well, sometimes. Mostly she's probably the most frustrated when it becomes such a demanding thing. I mean, I'm not just a non-believer, but my endeavors with the Thinking Atheist website and videos and live presentations and speeches and radio podcast and whatnot take a lot of time. And because I might be a little bit of a control freak, I insist on doing a lot of it myself. I just know how I want it to go. I know what I want the graphic to look like. I know how I want the podcast to be formatted. I know what I'm trying to accomplish, the tone I'm trying to set. And so I do a lot of the work. I'm going to have to begin delegating more and more. But when I'm committed, when I'm lost in the studio working on a project, when I'm gone for days at a time, when our relationship sometimes is cheated by my absence, even if I'm in the house, if I'm meeting a deadline, and like, I'm going to be up all night working on this. That's when things normally get a little crazy. But, as far as my right to believe what I believe and to own and live my own worldview, she's very much my champion. She supported me through the writing of the book and the publishing of the book and the book tour. I mean, we did a run of like autographed copies at the beginning, and she's in there. We had, I don't know how many books. She's in there, this person who believes in God, and she's helping me box up all these atheist books and ship them out. Much to the chagrin of, I'm sure, people in her circle. What the hell is she doing? Guy's an atheist. But anyone who takes the time to actually look at our relationship sees that we happy. We've got so much goodness in this house. I think there are good people and bad people, right? You can go anywhere and you'll find people who are great human beings and those who are just not. And those people can be atheists, they can be religious, and they can be anywhere in between. Anywhere you go, you'll find the good and the bad. But I look at the people who will bitch about the fact that she has bonded her life to an atheist, and I see the tremendous flakiness and lack of character and lack of reliability in their own religious lives. And the lack of joy, bitch and moan, and judgmental and negative. God, those people will suck your life dry. Have you ever been around somebody they're just negative people? You can usually tell by their Facebook posts. They never say, man, or try to make you laugh or share a family photo that brings joy. Normally it's, oh God, it's going to be another one of those days today. I woke up with a sniffle. I'm sure it's going to be the flu and I'll be off my feet for weeks. It's horrible. Those types of people, the kind of people you never ask them how they're doing because they will tell you. Well, these people have not brought a lot of joy. So, and meanwhile, you got the infidel, you got the atheist, and we're having a ball. Even despite every relationship has its challenges, but we're having a ball. I support her right to believe what she believes. And, that's good advice. I don't walk around and chide her for believing that there was a designer. That's the position mostly. I think it would be harder if she was a theist, if she was a Bible-thumping, Bible-toting, pulpit-preaching type. That'd be pretty rough. The deist position's a little easier because it's like, well, I think something created all of this. I think there is a designer out there, and it's not necessarily the God that has the Christian face or this face or that face, but something is out there. Well, fine, I can handle that. There are those nights when we feel like we should just get in the ring and hit the bell. 2 men enter, 1 man leaves. That kind of thing. That we've had those moments. We had some times, I guess, I don't know, last year, the year before, where we actually looked at each other and thought, are we kidding ourselves? Can we pull this off? Are we going to drive each other freaking crazy? And I think we just made up our minds that there's so much other good stuff about our lives that we love, and we're so committed. And I'm telling you, I'm sure Suzy and Bill can speak to this, and so many other couples. When the rest of your life is so wonderful and fulfilling, and I look at this woman and I just see her as a gift. I just think this woman is a gift. She is the person I look forward to seeing the minute I get home. And calling on the phone. And I mean, would you have that? Who gives a shit? You know, we could disagree about something else like politics or something else. Is it easy? Nah. It's not always easy. Does it make us crazy sometimes? Yeah. Do we want to throttle each other occasionally? Absolutely. But I think big picture, we've made that decision, and it's been several years. It's been a lot of years. We're actually planning a wedding, which is a little freaky. You plan it. I'm totally off on a tangent, by the way. I was younger. I was married in, I was 22. And, it was the candelabras and the tuxedos and the special music and the unity candle and all of these things. Well, I'm 45 years old. We've both been through a marriage. You know what? Right now, we're like, screw that. Let's find a pretty spot somewhere on planet Earth that we've always wanted to visit that we can afford. Let's exchange vows, take a few photographs, and be together. Invitations? Hell no. The kid's going to be with us? Yes. Well, that's pretty much it for me. What do you think? I don't know if that's just me just getting older and cranky or what. I don't need a bunch of people showing up. Let's hop in a car. Let's get on a plane. Let's find a pretty spot. Get a pretty dress. We'll go smooch on the beach or someplace. Call it done. We'll call it done. Let's finally get to the switchboard, since I pretty much exhausted the patience of our entire listener base. My apologies. Area code 208. You're on the Thinking Atheist radio podcast. Who's this?
Hi, Seth. This is Charles.
Charles, thanks for waiting. What's going on?
Well, I love the show. Our
you.
stories, yours and mine, are pretty similar. I grew up in an evangelical, Baptist, Assemblies of God family, and just got married last year, and we have a great marriage.
Awesome.
Last year, right after I got married, probably 3 months, was when I decided I was an atheist, although it was a long, long process. And my wife is okay with that. She grew up in evangelical as well, and her family is very devout. My family's very devout. Now she doesn't go to church, but she calls herself a Christian. And it's not really prevalent in her life, except occasionally she'll listen to worship music in the car. So I bought a Bluetooth headset so I can listen to your podcast while she listens to worship music.
What are we talking about? Are we talking about Hillsong and Chris Tomlin, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and she sings along, and she's got a great voice, so I love listening to her voice.
So you're the odd man out. I mean, you're the only one in that particular circle that's a heathen, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
When you say she comes from an evangelical family, are we talking about like a Assembly of God, non-denominational, speaking in tongues type stuff, or what are we talking about?
Non-denominational. I grew up in the speaking in tongues family, and then we went to a Baptist church. And then it became more inclusive and more progressive, in college. And then towards the very end of my college, I became a Mormon for a summer. And that's actually what was the catalyst for me becoming an atheist, was becoming a Mormon. But I guess that I should have called in a couple of weeks ago.
No, I get
and
it.
shared that story.
So do you think she's not going to church because she's embarrassed that she has to go alone? Or do you think she's honestly not all that interested?
Well, she likes the worship, but that's pretty much it. I mean, when we went to church together and she was bored during the services, would pull out her phone and, at first I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah, and then after a while I'm like, yeah, I guess it is boring too. And we started out, as both believers together, and she was bored, and I was the one thinking, well, we should probably go to church. And then we just stopped going, and eventually I became an atheist. And like, we've had some talks about religion. Some of them have gone great. Like, she's told me that she thinks that her marriage is better since I became an atheist, which I think that's interesting. And I think where she's going with that was that when I was a Christian, I had this idea of like, this is how our relationship should be. And now that I'm an atheist, I'm like, what the hell? You be you, I'll be me, and we get along great.
So you guys don't really have a whole lot of speed bumps. How long you been married?
Just a year. We got married July 7th of last year.
So how much of that is the honeymoon? How much of that is, you guys have been married for a year? Because I know how people speak to newlyweds. I know how sickening it sounds.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But we still have speed bumps when it comes to religion, because we've had some good talks and we've had some not so good ones. And like your earlier callers said, I think I need to use more finesse when I'm talking to her about religion. Like, I probably need to talk more Seth Andrews and less Matt Dillahunty.
Well, I don't know. Matt's he's a strategist. There are some other people out there that have no filter at all that I think might serve a better example. Do you guys worry about what will happen when kids come into play and what they're taught?
Yes and no. I think that we'll navigate it pretty well, because she's a really reasonable person, and I always thought that we'd raise them like free thinkers, and I want her to tell about, like what she believes, and tell them that, and then expose them to other religions as well, and then kind of let them just make up their mind on their own. And we're still like probably 2 years out from having kids at least or so.
Yeah.
But you never know.
Well, thanks for sharing a perspective. Congratulations on your marriage, and say hi to your squeeze for us and tell her thanks for letting us have you for the last 10 minutes. All right.
Thank you. And I love the podcast. You do great work. Thank you very much, Seth.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for the kind words. I appreciate you, my friend.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
I had an email from Dan. He said, the stories I could tell. I refused to go to my ex-wife's church. I guess they were married at the time, as they were already hypercritical about their dogma. She came home one day in tears. When asked about what had made her cry, her comment was, "It's just so sad that I will not see you in heaven. You are going to hell." What a great indicator of things to come. A couple of years later, she became a Jehovah's Witness. At least there was no guilt trip, just the "what do you know" about the various theologies. We're quite happy living our separate lives. I had an email from Igor, Igor, out of Israel. He said, "I'm an atheist, 30 years old, living in Israel, been married to my wife, Tanya, 28, for a year now. But our relationship is about 6 years long. She's a Christian. Long ago, we decided that our beliefs won't be a factor in our relationship and we won't interfere in our beliefs, although she believes in God and prays for him every night before bedtime, in and for my behalf too. What bothers or amuses me is her superstitious beliefs. We migrated as kids from the former USSR, and as you know, they are very superstitious in those areas. So naturally, she's very affected by all that. I can give some examples of things that bother or amuse me. There's a superstition that says if you forget something in the house and you go back and get it, then it is bad luck for that particular trip. So when we go out and she forgets something, she sends me back to get it and asks me to look in the mirror to make a face on the way out. It is said that this neutralizes the effect of the bad luck. Usually I'm showing her the face on my way back. Another superstition is for not passing objects from one person to another through a doorway. As being the only atheist member of her large family, I'm getting amused at the family gatherings, at the weekend table. Putting an empty bottle on the table is bad luck, or more accurately, a misfortune in the economic manner. Whistling inside a house is also cause for economic misfortune. God forbid if I'm to shatter a mirror. A funny thing, though, if I shatter a plate, I have bad hands. If she shatters a plate, it is good luck. Go figure. We've tried sometimes to engage in some kind of a debate about religion, but she gives up quickly. She's one of those who can't tolerate change as much, so to make her change her fate is practically impossible. She also thinks that it's silly for me to own a Minister of Church of the FSM certificate, the Flying Spaghetti Monster. But then I'm reminding her about the superstitious stuff, and she cools off. But we're both okay with that, and she promised me that when we're going to have children, she won't teach them about religion as if it were true. They will decide for themselves when they are old enough. Igor, thank you very much for the message out of Israel. Area code 918, you're on the Thinking Atheist radio podcast. Who's this?
Hey, Seth, this is Sean. How are you doing?
Doing well, Sean. Thanks for calling tonight's show. What do you have for us this evening?
Well, I have a believer that's my wife. We've been married for 8 years. And, you know, we both were believers when we got married, and I'm the one who changed probably 6 years ago. And the take on our marriage is basically, right now, she doesn't go to church. And when I go to atheist things, you know, honestly, I kind of stay to myself, I guess, trying to avoid building networks outside of our relationship because I think it would tear us apart.
Well, if a network outside of our relationship would tear us apart, I would be screwed. You know what I'm saying, Sean? I mean, I have a community of 130-some thousand strong on Facebook, so don't cheat yourself out of the opportunity to communicate with people of like mind as long as it does not provide a substitute for a relationship that you have at home. Now, I'm not a relationship counselor, but I think if balance is there, you should be able to communicate and interact with people of like mind, shouldn't you?
Well, I could see that point. I guess, you know, it's kind of one of those things where we've kind of chosen what topics we talk about and what topics we don't because, like you know, we've had those moments where it's just been knocked down, drag out, and, you know, those aren't the moments that obviously we want to dwell on. So we've kind of found that to exclude those beliefs, I guess, from each other because I know that she still listens to worship music and prays when I'm not around and that sort of thing. And she knows that I listen to podcasts and read books and stuff like that. But we just try to basically leave that part out of our mutual time together.
Yeah. Does she worry about hell
you know,
in relationship to you? Does she worry about your eternal soul?
You know, honestly, I don't know. She doesn't really. I know that she grieved. In her words, she said that, you know, she grieved when I fell away from the faith, so to speak. And, you know, I know that she felt cheated. She went to a Bible college here in Broken Arrow, and she spent a lot of time praying and believing for the right husband and all these kind of things. And then after we got married and things changed, she felt kind of cheated in her words, you know, and it was kind of hard at first, but I've explained to her, and she's witnessed the fact that I provide for our house and I'm a good husband, and it's just that the spiritual side of it, we just have to kind of leave on the fringe because we just have to agree to disagree, so to speak.
Yeah, you're not going to change her. She's not going to change you, or at least that's not the reason you're together. So you celebrate what you do have in common and have a good life.
Sure, and it is tricky. We have a 4-year-old, and, you know, the raising of her is kind of interesting. And, again, it's kind of one of those things where she doesn't cram the Bible down her throat, and I don't really try to dismantle some of the Bible stories and different things that she may see or any of those kind of things right now. We just kind of try to stay in that middle ground, and I'm sure that there will be times where those things are going to come to a head. I mean, it's kind of inevitable, but for now we just try to stay where it's in the middle and happy, I guess.
I'll tell you, there are people, if they were both of like mind on the issue of religion, they might have huge disagreements or some other potential wedge that they'd have to worry about. So, I mean, it's not all cut and dry, but if you guys are happy and doing well together, I think that's awesome, and I wish you both the very best.
Well, I thank you. And, you know, I do think it's just about compromise. You know, it's just like any other relationship, to be quite honest. You have to compromise on things, whether it be financial or, in this case, it's our belief systems. And that's where, like I say, you know, her going to church or me doing my thing, we kind of have to find those middle grounds that allow us to still maintain our family first and foremost. And if it means sacrifice on the other side, I guess that's what we need to do.
All right, Sean. Well, thanks for calling the show, and thanks for listening. You're much appreciated, man.
Thank you.
All right, take it easy.
Bye.
I'm not sure. I know what he's trying to say when he says compromise. I don't know that someone should compromise what they think or believe. And I'm sure that's not what he meant. I think he probably was meaning you should choose your battles. Decide what's going to create positive change or what's going to produce so much negativity, so much destruction that it's actually a counterproductive move to make. I don't think Sean's going to compromise the fact that he has looked at superstitious nonsense and come to the conclusion that it's all a bunch of crap and he stands against it. And I don't think she's probably compromising the fact that she holds to a deity out there somewhere. But they are making a determination that they are going to take kind of a three-dimensional look at how they approach the issue with each other to decide kind of a cost-benefit discussion. Is this worth it? Will anything come out of it? Will anyone change anyone else's mind? Is the relationship on the whole worth throwing under the bus over this particular issue at this particular time? I think you have to evaluate time and time again. You look at it and you just decide. So you're not really compromising where you're at. You just decide, is this a battle I'm going to fight with this person at this time for this reason? Yes or no? And sometimes the answer is no. And those people who walk around and they're always on the offense, trust me, those people, they claim individuality, they claim pure conviction, they're proud of themselves for never backing down. And in many, 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 many cases, these people are toxic. Being right is not enough. Sometimes you've got to be a little more diplomatic. Sometimes you've got to take a longer view. Sometimes you've got to have a love for people that trumps your desire to be in the right. Factually, you may be absolutely correct. Is it the right fight at the right time for the right reason? And sometimes, no, you got to back up and take another angle. And those people who live and operate without tact, without any foresight, without any thought, they just run in with a bullhorn and they just start tearing shit up. Those people, they pat themselves on the back for being, I'm the rogue, man. You're not going to no one's going to tell me to back down. These people are often toxic. Sometimes it's good to go in and stir it up. But if that's all you got, you're like a race car with the accelerator just pinned to the ground. Sometimes you got to slow down to be able to take the turn. You know what I'm saying? Totally. I just did a racing metaphor. What's wrong with me? I had a message in from Deshaun. I said, I wonder how much atheists trust people who follow religion with a prophet who said he came to divide families. Man, that's a great point, Deshaun. Comes right out of the scriptures as well. Everybody talks about how that Christ came to unite us, but they often ignore Matthew chapter 10, verses 34 through 37. Do not suppose that I've come to bring peace to earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I've come to turn a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. A man's enemies will be the members of his own household. Anyone who loves their father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Anyone who loves their son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Now, this rings pretty true in my own specific circle. By the way, thank you to everybody on the Facebook page. It's funny. I use Facebook like everybody uses Facebook, right? It's normally a reflection of what's going on in your life. A lot of times I just like to post funny stuff. On my personal page. If something makes me laugh and I'll throw it up there. Or I'll share an anecdote, something that happened. This week it was about the eye doctor, talking about the fact that I require progressive lenses. And I'm like, trifocals? You talk about the things that are going on in your life. And a lot of times if people can relate, they come along for the ride and they'll comment. And that's how I think your Facebook page should largely reflect who you are, right? Well, I had something happen in my my own circle, and I posted about it. I was mostly just venting. I know this community well enough that they'll always jump in to say words of kindness and support. And I totally fed off that. And I'm so grateful. I looked at the response, and I think we had like 650 people comment with words of support. But, Father's Day was this last Sunday. And those of you who know my story know that my parents are devoutly religious, and we've been going around and around for about 5 years. And, you know, we all love each other and whatnot, but it's pretty rough. It's been pretty tough to have a close relationship. And I'm sort of the guy that needs to be fixed. I'm the guy who's leading others astray. I'm the embarrassment. I bring shame, right? I mean, this is a culture where they like to high-five each other for leading someone else to Jesus Christ, where they talk about, you know, so-and-so has a mission trip next week. They're flying to this faraway land to help build shelters and bring food and medicine and lead others to Christ. And this is the language of my family. They pray before every meal. God, 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 all over social media. My mom is just in the hospital. I'm off on another tangent. That's a potential title, by the way, for the show, is On a Tangent. Mom got bit by a tick. And, I mean, she went way south. And the test for what kind of tick fever it was going to take a month to get back. So this antibiotic, they just threw it in. They're like, we didn't have time to wait. She got 104.5 fever. We got to go. And she was in the hospital for well over a week. And she was given amazing round-the-clock care by amazing medical professionals. The doctor, I tell you, his quick thinking may have just saved her. It was amazing. I mean, he just came in, he made the decision, bam. The support staff, the nurses, they were amazing. They walked in with smiles and eye contact and made you feel for that moment like you were the only person in the universe. And for such a profession that is such a grind, to see this level of commitment was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. And when Mom gets better and she's up on her feet and she's home, what does everybody say? Praise God. God is good. Thank God. Praise Jesus. What the? What? And I finally had to, I went and I posted a letter. Do not forget the infectious disease specialist who came in and pinpointed this and prescribed the medicine that saved her life. Do not forget the people who were there day and night caring for her at her bedside to get her back on her feet. How about an honorable mention, please? Well, that's the culture that I come from, and it's the culture that many of you come from. Well, last Sunday was Father's Day, and things have been strained. And so I wrote what I thought was a beautiful letter. You know, I mean, there was nothing about religion in it, nothing. It was all about, you know, just a thank you for being my dad kind of a thing. I read it aloud to Natalie, and she's like, what a great letter, send it. And a day passes, and I get the response, and it's about a paragraph of rebukes, starting with the sentence that says, sorry, son, we are people of faith. There is no real fellowship with anyone who is an unbeliever. Now, that is the book of Matthew come true, is it not? I've come to turn a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her daughter-in-law. Deshaun has a great point. The prophet said he came to divide families. Anyone who loves their father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Anyone who loves their son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And it grieves me in my heart. I think this is a person who's chosen an invisible sky parent over a flesh and blood human being's son. And it's emboldened me. You know, when this kind of thing happens, when I read about it happening to other people, and when it happens in my own life, it does ring a bell of, it sort of galvanizes me. It emboldens me to fight even harder. It has probably the reverse effect that it was intended. Is this an attempt to emotionally blackmail me to give up all of my non-belief and come back to the fold to bring the prodigal home? Maybe. Is it a chance to save face in front of everybody else because he's embarrassed his son is one of the guys on the front lines of atheism? Maybe. I don't really know. But when I see what religion has done to a father toward his son, I'm even more convinced this must be squashed, defeated, rendered to the history books, It just has to be done away. We have to fight against this. And it's my hope that down the way there will be less of these circumstances. There'll be less of these conversations. The road will be less difficult for other people because of what you and I are dealing with today. Everybody's got their baggage, right? And overall, I've got no complaints, guys. I mean, it's frustrating, but I've got a good life. I'm not persecuted. I'm not. You want to talk persecution? Talk about like an apostate from radical Islam. Those people they're the ones going through it. I've got a good life. I'm not bitching about that. I'm just sharing with you the frustration of dealing with someone who refuses to say, you know what, you're a big boy, you're a 45-year-old man, you've earned the right to live your own worldview. I disagree. I don't really get it. But you know what, you're family, and I love you, and I think let's hang. Let's go fishing. Let's talk about the weather. Let's just be together in the same room and let it all be good. Instead, it is, we are people of faith. There is no real fellowship with anyone who is an unbeliever. In other words, piss off. I'm speaking at the Oklahoma Free Thought Convention on Saturday. We're going to talk about the indoctrination of children and how people are raised in cultures where this type of thinking is normal and it is never challenged. And they become 40, 50, 60, 70 years old. And that programming is still going on, right? It's like a computer program. It just runs 24/7. It was probably installed by their parents. Their parents never told them there were other programs available, never told them there was an uninstall option for this program. They never gave him anything other than this and said, this is it. Congratulations. We were right. Now you can be right. Go live our way. Now, my hope is that we will see less and less of that. Will religion ever go away? Don't kid yourself. It'll always be here. And these people are going to get more freaky and more desperate, and they're going to get more indignant and more self-righteous with every passing day as this fight continues. I'm convinced it's going to get worse before it gets better. But it is going to get better. And when it does get better, I don't know about you, but I plan to be there. Join with me. We'll plan the party together. Okay? Because it's going to be awesome when the day comes when we find that the religious fundamentalists, the guilt porn, the superstitious nonsense, the infecting of our science books and our history books and our political systems, and the minds and hearts of our youngest and most vulnerable are not subject to this unbelievable bullshit. You betcha there's going to be a party. And you're all invited. Area code 330. You're on the Thinking Atheist radio podcast. Who's this?
My name is Matthew.
What's going on?
I called because my wife's a Catholic, and she doesn't know I'm an atheist yet.
How long have you been an atheist?
Probably since I got the internet, basically. Since YouTube started becoming big.
So let's see, YouTube kicked in at 2005 or so? So you've been an atheist for 8 years?
Yeah.
And you haven't told her?
Oh, I think she knows anyway because she saw my subscriptions to Dilante's channel and the Atheist Experience. And she's already told me just to drop her off at church, so.
So you drop her off on Sunday mornings and she goes without you, but you guys don't talk about it?
Yeah, we just don't talk about it.
Is that a solution for you? I mean, is it working?
Well, it seems to be working.
Okay.
I mean.
Thanks for calling.
Sorry, this is my first call anyway.
What do you think? I mean, was that you just wanted to sort of share that it can be done? You just don't talk about it, or you just keep it in your back pocket? I mean, where are you taking me on this journey?
I think it can be done. It's just depends on the personality of that person, how much they take it seriously, like fire and brimstone, or if they're more moderate personality.
Well, I wish you both the best, and I hope it's a conversation you guys have down the way. I'd like to see. I think. Agreement, disagreement, I think honesty is pretty important. I hope you guys come to a point where you can just sit down and just chat about it, and she can get in your head and you can get in hers and kind of see each other in full color,
Well, I've already gotten to her head about it before. She posts all those Catholic prayers and saints images and everything online, Facebook. Yeah. I always say to her, I said, well, what about this other person that just basically got caught making it up, that they were God incarnate or they had special powers?
Well, how's that going over, right? You just challenged her cherished deity and beloved worldview. What happened?
Usually just ignores it, typically, or she tells me to delete it, which I usually don't.
She posts some crazy Catholic stuff, and then I challenge her, and she says, take it down, and I say, screw you. It's true love.
Yeah, it is.
Are you guys happy? Come on, give me a happy ending here. You guys doing well?
Yeah, we're doing okay.
All right. Well, thanks for the call, and I appreciate you listening.
All right. Bye.
All right. See you later. 8 years? 8 years? Haven't had the conversation. Had an email in from Cindy. She said, I'm an atheist. My husband, raised Catholic, hasn't participated in his religion for years, but he still considers himself a Catholic, although far more open-minded than most after the years of exposure. Ours is a very pleasant agreement on religion. Actually, our son was raised without religion, and it has no place in our home. It's something we can all live without quite well, apparently. Carly sent a message and said, I'm married to a liberal Christian. I'm lucky, I guess, because it's really not a problem for us. He's one of those rare people that can be understanding and accepting of anyone. Many of my family and friends aren't so understanding. Forgive me if I say your name wrong. Is it Ximena or Zemina? It's Ximena. Said, I'm a believer, married to an atheist. We've been together 16 years. It hasn't been easy, but we respect each other's views. He knows I'm weak and I need to believe. Born a Catholic, but stopped practicing many years ago. All my kids were christened, and we celebrate Christmas every year. He told me he was an atheist on our first date, by the way. It helped. If I may, I don't think you need to believe because you're weak. You may think so. And I'm not saying that I'm trying to change your mind at this moment. I think you just need to give yourself more credit. You know, it's funny. I was watching a show that Darren Brown did called Fear. Is it Fear and Faith? Fear versus Faith? And Darren Brown's stuff is very theatrical, and a lot of people don't care for his particular style. I mean, he's an illusionist, and he's done all this stuff, and his stuff is impeccably produced, all right? And some people are like, oh, it's all a bunch of crap. It's too slick. It's too polished. I don't buy it. But he did a show that was very, very interesting. And he invented a drug called Ramyodin that was supposedly developed by the military, and it was designed to eliminate fear. Okay? And they went all out. They dressed out an abandoned office building to make it look like the Ramyodin complex. They had scientists and they had an advertising campaign. They had all of the bells and whistles. They had packaging for the medicines made up. They essentially spared no expense to make it look like it was a real thing. And what they did was they brought in all these people who each had fears of something different. One person had a fear of heights. Another person had a fear of crowds or speaking. Another person had a fear of singing in public. Other people wanted to just beat something, like they wanted to stop smoking, something like that. What they did was they gave them this drug. And the drug was nothing. It was just a sugar pill. But they gave them this drug and they said, take this for I don't know how many weeks it was and tell us if you see a difference. And the second they started taking it, most people said, wow, I feel so much better. My vision is so much clearer. My senses are heightened. I feel so much better. It was sugar. It was a placebo. It was nothing. But because they believed in themselves, they sort of gave themselves permission to be able to own the circumstances they were in. They stepped up. So this guy standing on top of a bridge, he's terrified of heights. He's standing literally right there on the top of the bridge, and he's just fine. And they tell him, by the way, the stuff you've been taking is a placebo. You did this. The drug did not. And they made this revelation pretty much to everyone. And I think there's a great lesson there. The mind is powerful. And I think if you walk around saying, I'm weak, I can't, I'm not worthy, I require a crutch to be able to do things and accomplish things in my own life, I think you cheat yourself. You're not weak. You are as strong as you choose to be. And I don't think you're cheating God. I'm not talking about God right now. I'm not thinking you don't cheat God to be able to demonstrate, to own and demonstrate strength in your own life. walking around and saying, I am weak, he is strong, that's not necessarily a virtue. And I think if you gave yourself a little more credit, I think you'd be amazed at what you can accomplish. All right? I'm not trying to be Dr. Phil. I'm just saying, give yourself some credit. Couple more real quick. Let's talk to area code 203. You're on the Thinking Atheist radio podcast. Who's this?
Hey, Seth, this is Mike. I deconverted at 40, so my stories are very similar to yours.
I feel like a kindred spirit has called the switchboard, my friend. It was about 40 when I hit that wall as well. What do you have for us tonight?
Well, I've got a wife of 18 years, and I've got 3 kids, 16 to 11. And you can talk to any of them if you want to after me. But basically, I deconverted about 5 years ago, and I kept it to myself for about 3 years. And then about 2 years, I let her in on it slowly, and it's been okay. We're both Catholic when we were married. She still is, but she's fairly liberal, and she belongs to a group that is heavy into ecumenism. So they're very much into outreach and trying to build bridges between all different peoples of different faith backgrounds.
And is it strained at home, or are you guys doing well?
I think we're doing pretty well. You can talk to her and ask her if you want, but we have some discussions on faith, not a whole lot. She's starting to realize where I come from, where I've reached, I should say. But I was pretty hardcore Catholic. I was a member of Opus Dei, and I grew up in the Pentecostal Catholic background, so the whole singing in tongues and my mom listening to the praise music all day at home, which is, well, you know what that's like.
I know what that's like. Well, I'm glad you two are doing well. I'm glad for your perspective. And anything else for us?
Do you want to talk to the believer?
Pardon me?
Do you want to talk to the believer? Do you want to talk to my wife?
Well, don't
the believer?
ambush her, but if she would like to join me on the show, I'd love to talk to her.
Yeah, I asked her a half an hour ago. She's ready.
All right. That sounds like a deal. Bring her on.
Her name's Laura. Seth.
Hello?
Hi, Laura.
I'm not on am I on a radio or something?
Yeah, you're on the radio. He told me that you knew you were on the radio, but only if you want to be.
You know, I agreed to talk to somebody, but I didn't really have anything really prepared. I just said I would do it. So
my name is Seth. I'm the resident heathen and host of the Thinking Atheist radio podcast, and we're talking about people who are believers and non-believers living in the same space. And it's not just love relationships, but can be a parent-child, it can be roommate, siblings, whatever. And we're talking about the ups and downs, the challenges of doing that. And I don't know that I stacked the deck in any one direction. So, I mean, I'm not necessarily dogging you for believing in God. He says you are a devout Catholic. Is that right?
I think so. Yeah, I would say so. I mean, you know, there's always a spectrum. There's always people more devout and people who would look at me and say I'm not devout at all. And you know what I mean? There's a spectrum. But yeah, I think I consider myself certainly practicing, certainly believing.
And so he comes to you and he says, look, I don't buy it anymore. And you say, what? I mean, how do you deal?
Well, when he first started to say that, I just thought he meant at first he wasn't going to be as hardcore about it, like a lot of Catholics are. Like maybe they don't believe in a lot of, you know, the doctrine or the laws, or maybe they believe like, you know, women should be priests, or they don't really believe in communion, or they don't believe the Pope's infallible, but they still show up to Mass on Sunday. And it's still sort of a part of who they are. And that's kind of what I thought he meant when he said that at first.
Did he compensate after the fact? Did he sort of go into full-blown, I'm making up for lost time kind of activism?
I mean,
what happens to many people who are, if they're religious for a long period of time?
Yeah.
If I can sort of show you the world through my eyes, like I came from Christianity, and after decades, I came to a moment of epiphany where I thought, wait a minute, this does not add up for me. And I wanted then to go and make up for lost time. And so I may have even to a fault been so vocal. I mean, I'm posting everywhere. I'm talking everywhere I can. It's like I can't keep it to myself. I've got to tell somebody, don't you guys see what I'm seeing? And I, for a while, drove everybody freaking crazy. So that was my question. Did he sort of do that to you?
He's totally like that now, I would say. He's on Facebook with these conversation groups all the time from, you know, his college days. He went to a conservative Catholic college, and some of the people that went there have kind of gone the other way. Some are still very conservative, and they have these long, long conversations. He's on there all the time. He's really he's very informed and educated about what's going on, even within the Catholic Church, even more so than I am sometimes. So yes, it's very much on his mind. It's very much.
Does it make you crazy?
Yeah, he's like that.
Does he drive you nuts?
I try not to engage in it too much because I just don't feel like we're going to come to a resolution about it. So I kind of let him kind of do that, on his Facebook, and I just don't engage in too many conversations with him because I feel like we can't really come to an agreement or to terms. I mean, I know where he's at. I can meet him where he's at, that kind of thing, but just in terms of trying to argue with him or trying to get him to see my point or that kind of thing, we just kind of don't go there.
So do you ever look at each other and go, man, this is going to be tough? Or is it a non-issue in the grand scheme of things? I mean, don't let me pry too deep into your life, but I'm genuinely curious. Does this divide give you pause in any way?
Well, I mean, I think it's not what I think is ideal. I mean, I would love us all going to church as a family. I would love us to agree on the religious education of our children. It's not ideal, but it's not a deal breaker by any means. I mean, he's still very much my life partner. He's still someone I very much enjoy to be with. I still very much love him as a person. So it's not a deal breaker, but is it ideal? Not really.
My fiance would probably relate to you a little bit. We were sitting watching television the other night. This was back when the tornadoes had hit Moore, Oklahoma, and the newscasters did a story about an open Bible found in a debris field somewhere. And they're talking about how someone said this is a sign. You know how it is. People are always looking for a sign. And of course, I probably did what your husband would do. I'm like, a sign of what? I mean, I burst out in the middle of the living room, and everybody just looks at me like, come on, take a pill. I mean, I kind of understand what that's probably like for you. If I can come to his defense in my own life, and I'll bet in his, we feel like, in many ways, we got duped by our families and culture. We felt like that we were living a skin that we were given by someone else to wear instead of really wearing one that was our own. We were speaking in someone else's voice rather than sort of finding a voice that fits us. And when we finally get there, when all of a sudden we go, oh, finally, I feel like I'm an individual and not an echo of my family and culture, we just want to get it out. It's just a natural response, and I hope it doesn't drive you nuts, but I think it comes from a good place, okay?
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with it.
You're full of crap, but yeah, I totally understand. No, that's all right, Laura. Do you know anything about me or this show, or did he just throw you on the phone?
Yeah, I pretty much got thrown on.
Okay,
All he said was, he's a lot like me.
Let me make you this promise. Look, if we finish this call and for any reason you don't want me to air this show airs mostly in archive. There's a few hundred people listening now, probably 600-700. And then after the fact, tens of thousands hear it in archive. If you do not want this, if you don't want to be a part of it, I'll just slice this call out. I absolutely will honor that. But I honestly think if you don't mind having your perspective heard, it'll be treated respectfully. I love people. Look, I'm an atheist, but I was a believer for a lot of years. I'm still the same teddy bear I was when I was a Christian that I am now. And most people who are atheists are like me. We love people. We love to laugh. And we don't spit on people who have a differing point of view than we do. Okay? Fair enough?
Right. And nor do I think that by any stretch that someone who doesn't have the beliefs that I do deserves to be spit on or treated differently or anything like that. I think his beliefs are to be respected, really.
Good for you. Good for you.
Or even if the belief is not that, there's a lot of good he can still do, he can do in the world, and a lot of, there's still a purpose and certainly a difference he can make in a lot of people's lives, the lives of our children and myself. And so I don't feel that way at all.
Do you think goodness can exist in the atheist?
Absolutely.
I'm glad to hear that. We don't hear it enough.
Absolutely, I do.
We don't hear it enough when we're dealing with people who believe that God being the author of good, we cannot manifest good in our life because we reject the idea of a deity. So therefore, we are now rudderless, sad, pathetic, angry, baby-eating malcontents, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad to hear you say it. I'm glad to see that you acknowledge that, and I'm sure he sees a tremendous amount of good in you. That's awesome. Anything else before I move on? Anything else you want to get off your chest? You got the floor.
No, I don't think so. I think thanks for talking to me. I think it's, I don't know really much about you, but I think it's great that you listen to both sides. And I think it's actually a really interesting issue. Mm-hmm. In our case, we came into this marriage both sort of in the same place and kind of moved to a different place. So I think it's a little bit of a different scenario than people who enter a relationship and, either different faiths or one of a faith and one not of a faith.
And I'm guessing you probably feel like he changed the game, not on purpose, but this isn't the deal you made, right? You thought,
exactly,
I came in with someone who was going to share life with me, and he was going to speak with me on my wavelength on this issue, and mid-game, he changed the rules, right?
Right. This wasn't really what I signed up for, but it's okay.
Well, people change, don't they? I mean, aren't people always changing in some way? Are you exactly the same person you are when you guys met?
No, not at all. No, some things are the same. I think some things will always be the same, but certainly people grow and change and gain insight. So and I can appreciate that. He kind of even says it wasn't my intention to enter into the marriage and be different. At the time that I made those promises and said those things, I meant them.
This sounds like an autobiographical thing. I mean, I went through the same freaking thing.
I gained a different perspective along the way, and this is where we're at. So it's, it's kind of pointless to go back, but it's like, we have to move forward with this now.
I'm convinced, Laura, that you don't choose what you believe. You don't wake up and say, today I choose to believe in whatever. I think you believe what you believe. It happens. And then what you profess to believe might be something else. But you can't choose to wake up one day and say, I do or do not believe in God. You just do or you don't. And everybody, I think, is trying to live an honest life. They're trying to find whatever the truth is. And if God exists, I don't think he would punish a genuine quest, a genuine search for truth wherever it may be. Mm-hmm. I think a God worth our worship would honor that, don't you think?
Mm-hmm. I do.
All right. I'm glad you called.
Thanks for taking the time to talk to both of us.
I know you're a keeper. I can see why I like you. I wish you guys the most happiness together, and I'm glad you called the show. You take care, all right?
Thanks, Seth.
All right. Take it easy.
Bye-bye.
Bye. I totally can relate. I was on the end of, I don't know why my first marriage continues to come up, but it was a conversation where I was like, this is hard for me to say. I don't buy this. I don't think I believe. Now, this was back in the questioning phase, right? This is not, I'm an atheist. This is, I don't think, and things are rough anyway, right? I don't think I believe it. I don't think I believe in God. I don't think I believe in God. I mean, he actually said the words a few times. And, it's the same kind of deal. This isn't the deal I made. Person I married was a devout believer, used to work in ministry, used to be a proponent of God. God, what happened? And then you go down the whole midlife thing. Oh, how old is he? Well, he's 30, whatever. Won't be long and he'll be 40. It's about time for his whole life to go straight to hell. This is just a phase. People are always trying to do that. But the truth is, if you add it up and you all of a sudden overcome the fear of asking legitimate questions, and the answers you come to say, no, this evidence does not point to a God. And that's a common misconception, by the way. Atheists say that there absolutely is no God. That's what I often hear, and I always have to correct them. No, atheists do not believe there is a God because we have seen no evidence to substantiate it. Disproving is not how we start. We follow the chain of evidence to see what the evidence supports. We take the non-theist position because we don't see any evidence. We see the world operating exactly as it would, as if there was no God. And most people who are of a belief are almost always of the belief of their families, and it's related to their geography, right? You're a Catholic, chances are you had Catholic parents. You're a Christian, chances are you had Christian parents. You're Muslim, chances are you had Muslim parents. Look at where you were born. What's the predominant religion? And think of all the tens and tens and tens of thousands of deities that have been worshipped out there, and you happen to be fortunate enough to be born into the right one. It's amazing. It's a miracle. Oh, it sucks for everybody else who was born into a deceived dogma or religion, but you've got the brass ring, And you now have the ticket. You are worshiping the right God with the right holy book, going to the right paradise. And most of us, honestly, this makes sense, and we're hardly ever challenged. And when challenge comes, and that challenge actually leads to a moment of epiphany where you say, wait a minute, I was not taught how to think. I was taught what to think. And now I'm going to think for myself. You don't get to choose what you believe. You simply choose what you profess to believe and whether or not you're going to act on it. For those of you who are in situations where you are coexisting with someone of a different faith or no faith, hey, it ain't the end of the world. And I've seen people in the free thought community who say it's a waste of time. You're selling yourself out. You're this, you're that. And maybe I'm being a little defensive because Natalie's a deist. It's very possible. But I'll tell you what, if having a healthy, happy, wonderful relationship is the end result of two people living together who have differing worldviews on some things, screw that. Look, I'm not going to apologize for having an amazing life. It is possible. It ain't always easy. It's not always pleasant. It's not always pretty. We're going to have our valleys. We're going to have those moments where we go crazy at each other. But by and large, are you doing well? Are you happy? Do you love, support, respect each other? Do you color each other's lives with the good stuff? And if the answer to that question is yes, then to me, it's a no-brainer. You don't love that person because they agree with you. You love that person, period. Perhaps that's an oversimplified, over-romanticized view of things, but sue me, that's just how I roll. Hope you can join us next Tuesday night, the Thinking Atheist radio podcast. The topic next week is Your Argument is Invalid with J.T. Eberhard. We're going to talk about the arguments long debunked that continue to rear their ugly heads. We'll do it next Tuesday night, the Thinking Atheist radio podcast. Take it easy.
Follow The Thinking Atheist on Facebook and Twitter. Watch dozens of original videos on the Thinking Atheist YouTube channel. And visit our website for resources, links, contact information, the editor's blog, and more. thethinkingatheist.com.